The old lady takes her granddaughter on a journey through ancient times and enjoys mentioning the live streaming system. The camera is on my granddaughter's body, and wherever she looks, it's the picture. It is destined that beautiful women can only serve as assistants, while wrinkled old ladies are the leading internet celebrities. What is playing? Poor to the point of urination, those who stutter have to tighten their belts and curse and fight. They fight against the old man with sharp eyes and the old lady from the neighboring village. They are invincible with a set of 8 fists. Later, it became worse. The flood and banditry brought disaster to the bandits. The canal was dug for infrastructure construction and grain storage. The grandparents and grandchildren led the live broadcast of Lao Tai to build the ancient rural dream home. Keywords of the novel. My home live broadcast room connects with the past and present without pop-ups. My home live broadcast room connects with the past and present. Download the complete set of TXT, and my home live broadcast room connects with the latest chapters of the past and present. Chapter 1. How much does this dung cost? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. How much does this dung cost? In the Great Qian Dynasty, Xiangping City, the city tower of Yulin town below Pingzhou County, was floating with 2 groups of human-shaped black mist, one old and one small. The 2 floating people can see the situation of the people entering and exiting the city tower, but the people below cannot see them. The younger one urged, "Milk, can't hesitate anymore. Really, I'm in pain all over now and feel like I'm about to be sunburned." The old man was so anxious that he couldn't make a decision. "It's really not possible. I can't make up my mind. You just say that the heavens mistakenly took us in, and what's wrong with us teasing this ancient city tower? Look at those people with their toes exposed, their front teeth laid off, and their hunched backs working year-round, indicating that those dying people are so poor that they have to urinate and bleed. Grandparents and grandchildren wish to hold their heads and cry bitterly, but crying is of no use. And there's really a chance to live. Who wants to die? Who would have thought they were a modern person, sleeping like 2 black mist, and then wandering around in front of this city tower, waiting for the pitiful people to take over the plate and immediately breathe out? The matter is too absurd, and the old lady doesn't know how to explain it. In short, they can judge the longevity of the people below through the black mist on their bodies. If they get closer, they will also be sucked in by those who have just died. Milk, look at those 2 people. That pair looks like they are both grandparents and grandchildren, at least the gender is right. You don't need to be my grandfather, I don't need to be your grandson, and the seniority is also right. The old lady carefully looked in the direction of her granddaughter's finger and saw Emma. The mist on those 2 people's bodies was even darker than her own, with only one set of teeth shining brightly. She was afraid they were about to die. After drifting for a few days, the old lady finally understood that the people of the Great Qian Dynasty were not living well. Hearing the sighs of people passing by, they apologized for 2 years in a row. The hot sun was like fire in March without rain, and the rainstorm lasted for 4 months. When it should rain, it should not rain blindly. The common people are farmers who rely on the weather for their livelihoods. This kind of wicked weather causes a halving of the harvest, so there is no wealthy person who is about to die to let them take over. The old lady glanced at her granddaughter next to her and thought to herself, she's alone, her granddaughter who has worked hard to raise her. She's about to intern and become a resident doctor in modern times, and good times are just around the corner. Unexpectedly. So let her bury half of the people in the dirt and cross into the bodies of any poor person, but let her granddaughter go, she is unwilling. The old lady took a deep breath and couldn't think about being unwilling anymore. Let's face reality first. The reality is that her granddaughter didn't lie, and she herself was in excruciating pain. The sun shining on her body lost its warm feeling, and instead, it felt like a wound splattered with oil, burning with pain. I'm afraid if they continue to hesitate like this, they won't even have the chance to continue living for those poor people. With a sudden change of heart, the old lady began to take a closer look. Not to mention, the little girl who was about to die soon looked a bit like her granddaughter when she was a child. In addition, the grandparents and grandchildren seemed to be dressed fairly well, with few patches. Together, they only have 8 patches all over their bodies, which is relatively good compared to the conditions in the houses they saw before. The old lady gritted her teeth and clapped her plate, saying, "All right, let's follow up and take a look." The grandparents and grandchildren followed behind the 2 poor people from a distance, and as soon as they arrived at a thatched cottage in Erdo village, they collapsed with a thud. At the same time, as the sky and earth spun around, the old lady, who had originally wanted to determine what kind of person they were, anxiously shouted, "I need to see again, I need to see again." However, she was enveloped by an irresistible suction and stuffed into the bodies of the ancient ancestors and grandchildren. Mother. From a distance, Yulin saw her mother-in-law and niece both lying at the doorstep. When she threw down her hoe, she almost twisted her foot into the ditch and quickly ran over. Yulin knelt on the ground, pinching her mother-in-law with one hand and calling out to her niece on the other side with a crying voice, Tiangsener, don't scare auntie. What's wrong with you and your breasts? It's fortunate that it's time for the village to start working at this time. In order to prevent flooding, the village is organizing everyone to put in labor to dig the dam. Many villagers saw the scene in front of the old Su family and hurriedly threw down their hoes and poles, helping to call the barefoot doctor in the village. And some experienced women on this side had already slapped their thighs and screamed inwardly, because when they probed Mrs. Su's breathing with their hands, they didn't seem to be angry anymore. As for the granddaughter of the old lady, Su Tianxin, there was no reaction at all. Just as everyone was discussing whether it was poisoning or something, when I suddenly collapsed, the barefoot doctor in the village finally arrived and gave the answer to Su Laotai's daughter-in-law, Yulin, and the big guy. I'm full and full. Villagers. This cause of death has caused everyone to stab their buttocks with a small knife, opening their eyes. It made it difficult for them to empathize with it. I don't know what's going on, but empathy has decreased a little bit. But the villagers also understand in their hearts that don't underestimate the importance of food support. Where have we had a full meal in the past 2 years? It's the Chinese New Year when we're 6 or 7% full. Cold and restless, old lady Su and her granddaughter didn't know where to go for a wild show, and they were hungry and persevered. Is that okay? There is not much oil and water in my stomach for years and months, and it is difficult to drain what I used to eat. This is the truth. There are many people in the village who have abnormal urination and defecation. With such a head, they can't vomit up and down. Sure enough, the doctor also analyzed it this way. Qin Yang, hurry up and help your mother-in-law and niece. You women's family, come in quickly and help me. I'll go back and take the emetic medicine to boil it up. If you can't hold it up anymore, you might have to prepare for the aftermath. Upon hearing this, it was already a matter of time. Even the old lady who was very unhappy with Su on ordinary days took the initiative to help her stomach, saying, spit up quickly. Don't miss that little bit of food. Even if it's big fish and meat, you'll have to spit it out. After tinkering with a cup of tea for a long time, the old lady still didn't react. Instead, Su Xiangyi survived in Su Tianxin's body. It's not easy to travel through time, and it's even harder to come back to life for someone who should have died. Su Xiangyi began to vomit heavily. And he vomited until his face turned white, knowing that he was in an awkward situation. At this moment, Su Xiangyi was wrapped in a cotton quilt naked, and the back was smeared with oil. 2 women were raising their middle fingers, eager to try to pull it out. She didn't bother to say rejection, as it seemed that her milk had not yet successfully traveled. If Grandma didn't succeed in her journey, and this terrible ancient world only left her, then she might as well die. Su Xiangyi was full of anxiety and wanted to command everyone to help her grandmother in the right way. Helplessly vomiting, he was extremely weak, unable to support himself with his elbows, and the sound he made with all his strength was like a mosquito humming, completely submerged in the chatter of living one, finally living one. And when Su Xiangyi finally climbed up to his grandmother's side, he saw Yu Qingyang, with tears on her face, stuffing a ball that looked like mermaid into her grandmother's mouth. What is being fed? Ugh. The villagers and the doctor who helped have already left. It has been an hour and a half since the grandparents and grandchildren woke up, but perhaps their dependent mother is still vomiting heavily. The reason comes from that pill. Su Xiangyi didn't even know how to persuade her to milk, because the ingredients of the pill were. You actually fed me feces, and I was about to wake up. You even fed me a mouthful of feces. Mrs. Su's face turned white as she vomited, and her lips trembled as she spoke. She is an old lady from modern times. We modern people can eat bran and swallow vegetables, where have we ever eaten feces? I heard that when I was fed a big one, my stomach immediately turned upside down. Yu Qingyang knelt down in front of the Kang with a thud, a little afraid to look at her mother.in.law, but afraid of not explaining clearly. She turned around and her mother.in.law punished her for not having enough food to eat. Once her mother.in.law vomited something long or short, her man and uncle would definitely not be able to spare her when they returned from working in the city. This was the big deal. Su Xiangyi came to help her, but Yu Qingyang refused her niece's kindness and couldn't stand up. She knelt down and cried, saying, "Mom, you may not believe it when you say it, but in fact, my family has made a fortune. My grandfather used to live a very good life, and she used to work as a dung man in the imperial city. So." Yu Qingyang looked out of the window with tears in her eyes before lowering her voice and saying, "So it's the dragon legacy pill, Mom. Dragon, you know what I mean. If I say more, it will be completely against the truth." It was pulled by the person at the top. Old Lady Su closed her eyes, still sitting with big balls of feces. She thought a miracle would happen. On the other hand, Qin Yang was afraid that her mother.in.law would still not believe that there was such a good thing in her family. She continued to explain in detail, "This is true, because it seems very expensive. My father had specifically instructed me before swallowing his breath that if I had a good life, I would put this dragon legacy pill in a box and take a look at it when I have nothing to do. But if I am in dire straits, this will be my last possession." Mrs. Su thought to herself, "I really thank you, my dear daughter.in.law. Why don't you just use your money to eat?" Ugh. Mom, you're fine now. Can you stop vomiting or not? My dad told me about the formula for this pill, but it comes with hawthorn and honey, which are good things. While patting her mother.in.law's back, Yu also glanced at her eldest niece, who had been exceptionally obedient since waking up. Although my niece is a girl, she has nothing to do with being quiet as usual. But now Su Tianxin feels like a different person. My niece couldn't resist picking on her, did she? Did a 13-year-old girl think too much in her heart? Tian Shiner, this is the only one. You are an elder and can't handle it easily. Your aunt only fed you milk, so there is absolutely no intention of reluctant to give you food. Here is this small box for you, it's a bit of a dragon's aura, don't pick on your aunt. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. If you can't get along with money, you can put it all down. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. If you can't get along with money, you can put it all down. Yu Qingyang brought in 2 pots of water one by one and asked them to wash up. Su Xiangyi looked at the empty small box in his hands, which was equivalent to his aunt giving away all the personal expenses left by his mother's family. Although she was fortunate enough to have only one dragon heritage pill, otherwise she would have eaten it too. But does this small empty box precisely indicate that this ancient aunt has a very good character? Su Xiangyi planned to leave the small wooden box for the time being, but she was afraid that she wouldn't accept it. Turning around, Qin Yang easily couldn't sleep anymore. Milk, it's already midnight. Let's also wash and sleep together. Su Xiangyi leaned closer and said, Auntie has been peeking at you from the window several times, thinking you haven't calmed down yet. If you have anything you want to know, I'll see tomorrow. Mrs. Su raised a torch and glanced again at the mud walls, thatched roofs, and muddy ground. This family didn't even take advantage of the one with only fur. There are only 4 thatched cottages in total, and in my memory, I have spent all my savings to build this dilapidated house. There is not much of it, and there are still 2 hanging money famines left to pay off. Otherwise, the original Su Laotai should have 3 sons at home, and Yu Qinyang is the second wife, while the third and fourth have not yet started a family. All 3 of my sons are gone, so I want to go to the city and do odd jobs, hoping to repay the 2 debts as soon as possible. As for why did it start with my second son? Because the situation of the eldest son and daughter-in-law, who are the original parents of the granddaughter, is very similar to that of a modern son and daughter-in-law, and they disappeared long ago. The reason why the second daughter-in-law, Yu Qinyang, and those 3 sons treat their niece very well is that on the one hand, there are those who have not yet started a family, which is not even biased, and on the other hand, the second daughter-in-law has not yet had children. On the one hand, it was the father of his granddaughter. When the village was forcibly conscripted, the most responsible elder brother secretly signed up. Unexpectedly, his younger brothers were conscripted and died on the battlefield. So whether it's Yu Qinyang or a few uncles, they all treat their nieces like biological children so much. Upon this thought, Mrs. Su forgave her clumsiness, otherwise she would have been a bit overwhelmed and felt that her age was in vain. After all, that's not blind. I thought I could choose someone with similar family conditions, so I deliberately chose to be more carefree and picky at the city tower. However, if you look at this poor family, she's going to regret it. I forgot that when I go out to visit, I usually wear the best clothes, not just a few patches. But as long as this family can treat her granddaughter well, it's better than anything. No matter how hard or poor this family is, she will, that's a bit unbearable. Baby, look at this quilt. It's mostly made of willow catkins, and the weather can handle it now, but how about winter? You're a modern child, and you've never eaten any bad food. Milk is afraid you can't bear this tough life, but it's different from eating a weight loss meal. And you don't remember it coming to fruition, but Milk knows very well in her heart that the autumn harvest here is already over, but there isn't much rice left. Including your uncles, when you turn around and go home, the food on each person's head is not enough to eat half full until next spring. Su Xiangyi is not sure about these things. She just went out to give milk and wipe her body with water. She specifically looked at the bowl rack, and only the bottom of the jar was left with oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar. Su Xiangyi hugged Mrs. Su's arm and comforted her, saying, "If you were such a worried person, how could you have a head? Right now, I know we're still alive, we're still together. I'm only 13 years old, and I'll be with my grandmother for a long time. That's enough. They need to live well for Su Posi's original body and Su Tianqin. Everything else can be driven to the front of the mountain, there must be a way. You can think of it. It's not that you often say that the sky can't starve to death and blind the sparrow. Hey, Milk, I heard from our department nurse that in the novels they read, there are golden fingers that travel through ancient times. You said that for people like us who were forced to wear accidental injuries, could God also give them some skills? Don't let Milk worry, think about something else. What is a golden finger? It's just. Su Xiangyi began to explain, only to be interrupted by his grandmother after explaining a few sentences. Stop it, it's confusing to hear. We don't even have any hair on our bodies, even if we wear a gold ring. Sigh. If you're looking for that, why don't you pay more respects to the god of wealth worshipped by our family? In modern Mrs. Su's home, not only is there a couplet dedicated. The god of wealth lives in my house and will definitely be released this year. Mrs. Su tucked in her granddaughter's hair while laughing, God of wealth, you have appeared. Can you be my granddaughter's golden finger? I can help her study ancient books again. We can't ignore a single character. Our child is an intellectual, and I have to make her. Mrs. Sue's eyes suddenly widened because she could clearly hear the sound of music exploding in her mind, and she was singing. Congratulations on your wealth, congratulations on your brilliance. Please come over for the best, and leave for the worst. It's okay to be polite to many people. Welcome, God of Wealth, to the live broadcast room. Host authentication successful. The rules of the live broadcast room are. Mrs. Sue grabbed her granddaughter's hand. Her hands were cold, her mouth was fluffy, and her whole body was twitching. Did you hear me? Su Xiangyi was also a bit confused. Quickly talk to Nai Shi. Why didn't I understand what we were supposed to do inside? Live streaming. Who should we show it to? Where should we broadcast it? There's a camera in this room. Emma, just now she and her granddaughter were washing their buttocks one by one in this room. This day, whether you're eating shit or showing your butt, you're going to be devastated. Su Xiangyi quickly calmed Nai down and said, "Don't panic, Nai. I understand. The authentication was successful just now, and the previous one was not recorded. Even if it is recorded, it can be cut off. As for who to watch the live broadcast for, the rules say that you should always be the anchor for modern people. And the camera is." Su Xiangyi swallowed the non-existent saliva and exclaimed, "I feel like I'm just a camera. Wherever I look, the live broadcast room will display whatever kind of image I see on that side. Can you be a camera with radiation?" Mrs. Sue's first reaction was that she was afraid of her granddaughter carrying electricity. The thunder couldn't crack and smoke, and she said, "Refuse quickly. Let's tease the ancient place together, and we also need to live stream to relieve the boredom of modern people." She also angrily said to the camera somewhere, "You think so? It's harmless to the body. Milk, listen to that and play it well, there's still money to get." Mrs. Sue said, "Hey, God of Wealth's live broadcast room, can you hear me? Damn it. How could this be a way to relieve modern people's boredom? It's called sharing life. So what, how many copper coins can you give? Are you sure you can spend in this ancient land?" Su Xiangyi said. "As for how much salary is given, it all depends on one's abilities. Being able to retain the audience, with more and more people watching the live broadcast, having more hearts and giving more lanterns, determines whether to distribute 3 or 5 copper coins a day based on this performance. Even if you have the ability to become a big anchor, you can earn a decent salary in a day. Take it seriously." So in ancient times, when the sky was just beginning to dawn, old lady Su asked her granddaughter to sit opposite her. She waved her hand at her granddaughter's forehead and said, "Hello family, I am Grandma Xianghua, the anchor. As you can see, we are just ordinary, very simple and serious rural old ladies. We are not fair-skinned, beautiful, and have long legs, nor can we swallow precious swords and break big rocks. So I've been thinking about it for a while to come up with a talent that happens to be cooking for our family later. Show everyone how to divide a steamed bun into 2 days to eat. Hi, beautiful girls, have you missed me? Let's embark on a new book journey, and in the days to come, we can be together again, spending one holiday after another. The new book issue is updated at 7 a.m. daily. The new book period places great emphasis on data, which is related to the grades of the book. Therefore, we hope that everyone can cast as many monthly and recommendation votes as possible. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Repentance of Marriage, 2 chapters in 1, rewarding Lin Yulin Plus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Repentance of Marriage, 2 chapters in 1, rewarding Lin Yulin Plus. The old lady's daughter. In law, Yuqinyang, would get up every morning to chop firewood when she heard the rooster crowing from the neighboring Hao family. Yuqinyang is not here, which is convenient for the grandparents and grandchildren to live stream and talk. Mrs. Su was introducing, family members, what you are seeing now is my stove. This side has a water tank and a few pickled vegetable jars, while the other side has 3 stove pits that have been smoked black, which cannot be avoided. The lid of the large pot and the vegetable board are both made of wood. Mrs. Su thought to herself, alas, unlike modern people who hold lids lightly and check whether dishes are cooked at any time, some lids are still transparent and can be seen without lifting them. What she used to use every day has now become something she envies and wants to have again. Mrs. Su patted the half-arm-high chopping board and explained to the audience in the live broadcast room. This chopping board cannot be washed too brightly. It is heavy and not buried by Grandma Xianghua. It is a willow stump, and it is impossible to wash it with a loud sound every time the vegetables are cut. You can only water it and wipe it with a cloth. After finishing speaking, she raised a cloth to show everyone, and tried to use this eraser. However, she vomited in her throat and almost vomited herself first. What's this smell like? Just to save some alkaline noodles and pig pancreas, even if the cloth is not washed properly, it's okay to scald it. She didn't even know how to evaluate this original body. But the old lady pretended to have a full hiccup, and the clean grandmother's character must not be lost, otherwise they would see us cooking and be disgusted. Mrs. Su continued without changing her expression. As for the wooden cabinet on the right side, which looks like a soybean sauce color, it belongs to my family's valuable items. It is called a bowl rack or a cupboard, and you can put some oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, fine rice noodles in it. The lock hanging on it is horizontal, and I will insert a key to unlock it for you. Now I'll scoop the noodles, and we'll start cooking. The old lady looked at her granddaughter while scooping up her face, and winked her eyes with a secret sign agreed in advance, which meant to remind. It's your turn to talk, granddaughter. Your eyes are the camera. It's more convenient to record and talk at the same time. Otherwise, Milk has not been making a big poor meal for years, and it's easy to roll over if she is bent on 2 tasks. The 7 old irons in this live broadcast room are worried that we are fake. Regardless of whether the ancient background is fake or real, the old lady is not very conflicted and does not intend to explain more. The relationship gradually improves. Emotions come out little by little. Besides, one day we will go live to the village and show everyone those group performances. Su Xiangyi, no, from now on it will be Su Tianxin. She has already discussed with her grandmother that if she accepts someone's body, she will accept everything, including her name. Su Tianxin received a secret signal and immediately took on the role of assistant. She planned to take a step forward for her grandmother, so she carefully introduced it. Her eyes were measuring cups, adding as much water as needed to make sure the 7 viewers in the live broadcast could understand. This is my big iron pot. My milk is scooping water to prepare noodles, and the water temperature is about 45 to 55 degrees Celsius. No more. What's this? You're still a top student, you're so dry. Mrs. Su tugged at her granddaughter's clothes and said, "Where are those words in your belly?" She awkwardly and politely smiled at the camera and said, "Our child was a bit nervous when she gave her voiceover for the first time. Actually, there's something that can't be erased, right? We're all family members here. Just say whatever you want, just treat it as a household chat, and that's what makes it lively." Su Tianxin understood. Does milk mean it needs to be described? Okay. What you are seeing now is my big iron pot, which has a long history, so old that it seems like it was left over from Nu's mending of the sky. The rust in the pot has been eaten away, and it has become flavorful with every meal. Mrs. Su. My milk is currently scooping coarse corn flour, and there are currently 3 people at home in our family. Each person has 4 steamed buns a day, and she needs to cook it in 1 pot for 2 days. Otherwise, she would waste a lot of firewood by cooking less. People may wonder, is this little corn flour enough? The answer is yes, definitely not enough. So my grandmother scooped out elm bark flour and corn cob flour again. Mrs. Su kneaded the dough while taking the conversation. For me, it's easy for children to be confused about this. This is not the black bark on the outside of the elm tree, it cannot be eaten. You need to scrape off that layer and peel it off to see a layer of white tender bark called phloem inside. Then we dry it in the sun, grind it with a stone mill, and sun and grind it a few times to make this powder. The same principle applies to corn cobs, where the corn kernels on the outside are kept for the holidays and the kernels are used to make flour. Corn cob grinding is a good thing, with powdered sugar inside. If there is a shell left after eating peanuts at home, it can also be ground into powder, but if there is no peanut shell at home, it is not put in. In the past, my family used to eat dry food made from these few types of flour, which didn't contain any corn flour. This is my first live broadcast today, and if I put on some good ones, they will make it look good. Let's show my family what it means to be a serious steamed bun. The old lady didn't lie. In my memory, the Su family didn't want to put corn and noodles in their nest during this season, because they could still find a lot of food in autumn, and all kinds of grain inventory had to be kept in the snow to seal the mountains before eating. Otherwise, among the 6 members of the family, the 3 sons would love to eat 10 steamed buns in one meal without even holding on to them, without considering what to eat later. Today is the first time my granddaughter has eaten this kind of food. It's one thing to have memories, but it's another thing to really taste it. Mrs. Su is afraid that her granddaughter won't be able to swallow it, so she mixed some corn flour. This is also why Mrs. Su said she would perform a talent for everyone. How can a steamed bun be divided into 2 days to eat? In modern times, a steamed bun made from corn flour must be mixed together with elm bark flour and corn cob flour for 2 days. Mrs. Su looked at the curtain of dry food she had kneaded in her hand and thought to herself. In ancient times, prisoners ate even less than modern ones. What should we do? Even if it's already here, we need to think about how to survive. Otherwise, if next year is another year of famine, the whole family will have to eat dirt in the beginning of spring. Eating dirt is a joke in modern times. Her old lady understands it, but here it's true eating. Like guanine soil, it is soft and squeezed together like a white dough. When eaten, the stomach instantly becomes full, but as it eats, the stomach grows larger and eventually swells to death. So Mrs. Su took a deep breath and began to cheer herself up. Don't always cling to the good modern life, which is incomparable to modern life day by day. It is important to constantly remind oneself that there must be a sense of crisis, not only open source but also cost saving, and to have the same mindset as the original body, which is to eat when idle and work when busy. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been much to eat and there wouldn't have been any success. Once there was a sudden change in the family, such as selling food for money to save lives. How could we deal with this critical moment and turn around to eat dirt and die with the Su family? Isn't that deceiving people? It's better to divide the family and don't let the descendants of the old Su family fall for it. After finishing the meeting with Mrs. Su, she heard her granddaughter say that the audience wanted to watch the process of making elm bark powder. She added about 10 more people to watch the live broadcast, and the number of people increased. She immediately responded with joy. Yeah, when we turn around, Grandma Xianghua will take you to peel the bark. Actually, this powder is really good. It has stickiness, and even sorghum noodles have no stickiness. You can make noodles by mixing the two together, otherwise only sorghum noodles won't do. You can also use it to make dumpling skin, which is the authentic way to make hileo noodles. When it gets hot, let's chill it with well water for a while, and you can also make cold noodles, sour and sweet. Su almost said to herself, I'm so greedy. Su Tianxin saw his grandmother start making a fire and got busy. He quickly explained and couldn't let his words fall to the ground. Now my milk will put the dry food on the drawer, and plan to cook congee under the curtain. You should know that in ancient food culture, there were only 2 words. Vague, so it was essential to have a meal. But congee is not made of millet. In my family, congee is made from the seeds of dog-tail grass. It is said that millet has become a dog-tail grass after 3 generations of landing, and it is also the original seed of xiaomi. So during this season, our family will pick many larger dog-tail grass seeds and fruits. Su Tianxin continued from his original memory. The dog-tail grass you have collected should be burned in the fire, picked with your hands, and the bran of the grass seeds cleaned, otherwise it will be too dry to swallow and make your throat sore. I saw old Madame Su put congee and dry food on the lid of the pot, and prepared to stir-fry mixed vegetables in the clay pot next to her. Su Tianxin's grandmother put it on, and she explained it the same way. Miscellaneous dishes are made by cutting scallions and garlic foam into small pieces and stir-frying them in a wok. The blanched ferns that can be harvested from spring to autumn are inside. Blanch mushrooms in water and shred them, then shred red chili peppers and stir them inside. You may ask, is it true that not a drop of oil is added to the stir-fry at home? The answer is yes, it's definitely not added. Just stir-fry until the water is dry and then take it out of the pot. Let me show you again that mushrooms grow like this, belonging to a type of flat mushroom. You can't just eat mushrooms, otherwise sacrificing oneself for love is not an ancient legend. It can happen if you don't eat mushrooms well, which will make those with hard lives no longer have hard lives, and those with short lives even shorter. Mrs. Su. The granddaughter's introduction is really unique. At this moment, Yu Qinyang returned from outside carrying firewood and said, "Mom, Tian Xiner, I'm back." Su Tianxin looked at his aunt, and by this time there were already more than 50 viewers in the live broadcast room, so he naturally saw Yu Qinyang dressed in ancient times. The subtitles in the live broadcast room are flashing one after another. Oh my God, is this real or fake? Carrying such thick and high firewood back, the props are so thoughtful, and this ancient woman has 12 patches all over her body. In the eyes of modern people, there are only a few pieces of cloth and 12 patches in total for clothes. Are you exaggerating or not? Su Tianxin thought to himself, no, you miscalculated. Actually, there were 13. The biggest patch was on Aunt's buttocks, but it was covered by the coat on top. Most ordinary farmers here can handle their height with loose cloth ends, and they won't be able to make new clothes for several years. They can't even afford to use silver money to keep busy and eat. Even if there is spare money, most people still make clothes for their elders or men's homes. It is said that only when men dress well outside and carry women's hands can they show that their wives are virtuous. However, her old Su family is a bit special, belonging to a farming family that dresses better in the village compared to others. Auntie's clothes are only worn when she goes to carry firewood at dawn, and her family lives in the eastern part of the country without encountering anyone. When the weather is completely bright, she will go to work on flood prevention after breakfast. Although the work is quite dirty and requires clothes, Auntie will change into clothes that only have pants, legs, knees, and shoulders patched with the same color cloth. The clothes I wore after dawn were still pretty good. As for the reason, Su Tianxin can only say that her original grandmother is more face-saving. For example, the grass seed congee and the dry food made of elm bark powder, the original grandmother only allowed everyone to eat at home, and not to say anything when going out. During busy farming hours, I bring food and even have to specially show good food to the villagers. Auntie, please wash yourself first, and then we'll have dinner. Yu Qinyang was stunned as she watched the basin of water brought over by her niece. The live broadcast room was flooded with comments. Wow, the expression is so real. I don't know if my niece always bullies her aunt on weekdays, but now there's a camera to perform well. Or is it true that Shuang acted for the sake of topic relevance? If it's done, the acting skills are really impressive. Where could Yu Qinyang know that she was being recorded? She washed her face and quickly concealed the redness under her eyes. My niece used to be unwilling to talk to her. On the first day of the Lunar New Year this year, my niece pointed at everyone's noses and cried, you all owe me. Her man immediately walked out of the door, squatting outside, holding his head and secretly wiping away tears. Yes, during the conscription that year, she should have gone as a man. So since the first day of the Lunar New Year, my niece hasn't talked to her much anymore, and even a few uncles can hum with their noses. I didn't expect to not only talk with a smile today, but also fetch water for her. Yu Qinyang felt that this was the reason for Long Yuan. She didn't listen to her father's words and just stayed to be herself, which is called heart to heart. Dinner's ready. Mrs. Su lifted the steaming lid of the pot and deliberately placed the table in the main room. Yu Qinyang wiped the water off her face and quickly stepped forward to help. She was a bit puzzled and said, "Mom, why bother setting up a table when it's not festive?" Usually, she would eat some dry food, drink some wild vegetable soup, and sit on a small stool by the pot to take a bite. Su Tianxin knows the answer but cannot answer it. "This is live streaming," Grandma said, "the atmosphere must be in place, regardless of whether the food is casual or not, the atmosphere must be high." Poor cake, such a big table, only these few things, only a few people. Old Madame Su took the chair and picked up the chopsticks. She saw Yu Qinyang sitting at the table waiting for her to share the porridge. She was afraid to take it. She sighed and felt that the calf was completely finished. The charitable mother.in.law might be gone. Old irons may scold her. When encountering that irritable little daughter.in.law, the audience would have to say that if my wife dares to divide the meals for me, I dare to lift the table at her house. But old ties, this is all the original thing. I don't know if you would believe us, even though we are the heroes of the game. Mrs. Su has already thought about it this way, so she decided to act in her true colors and focus on authenticity. Moreover, too much change can easily cause the daughter.in.law to become fluffy. What are you looking at? I look like a pastry. I'll feed you. I'll cook my own food, but I don't have hands. I'll have to go to the river ditch to fill the soil later. Who can do that job without you eating enough? Ah, Mom, I'll eat. Yu Qinyang felt warm in her heart, almost shedding tears again, feeling that Long Yimru had not left it as the final entanglement. Otherwise, in the past, when eating, my mother.in.law would have given her a fixed amount. Yu Qinyang was thinking about what to do to be better to her mother.in.law and niece, but she didn't notice Su Laotai's smiling sentence, "We're moving." I am not surprised that my niece will suddenly comment on a few words of grass seed kanji. Well, it's a bit bitter, it's a bit throat-piercing, and it's a bit like sesame mixed with grass. While eating inside, a few people suddenly entered the courtyard. There are 3 elderly women from the same village who help guide the way. Judging from their expressions, they know that they can't leave even with a loud roar. They plan to enter the hospital to watch the excitement, as well as 2 women with ugly faces. The old woman was supported by a middle-aged woman with a silver hairpin on her head. Mrs. Su just glanced at her and said, "Go back. If you don't come, I'll have to go find you guys. The matter that your man discussed with me yesterday is over." I don't agree. Thank you to the beautiful girls for casting their monthly ticket recommendations. Thank you to the following book enthusiasts for giving a reward. Lin Yulin gave a starting amount of 10,000 yuan, bought 5,500 starting coins for the Puffly, Kalizi 929 with a reward of 5,000 starting coins. Qinghe also offered a reward of 5,000 starting coins. A reward of 5,000 starting coins will be given for returning to the snow and riding the wind, fluttering her wings. Su Mushroom gave a reward of 1,500 starting coins. A discount of 1,000 starting coins will be offered for leisurely depreciation. Mao Bing loves reading and offers a reward of 1,000 starting coins. Book Friend 15020719302595 rewards 100 starting coins. Book enthusiasts will receive a reward of 100 starting coins on 202103302132311940. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Rice Buckets vs. Dogs. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 4. Rice Buckets vs. Dogs. Xianghua's words are quite informative to the three women in the village. The three women thought they were whispering to each other, but in reality, it was called not carrying someone's back. What's the point? Have you heard of it? It's just a man discussing things with her. Emma, I know now. It's not like an old man wants to marry a granny. Yulin is Lady Sue. The talking woman analyzed while looking at the old woman wearing a silver hairpin. From the perspective of her appearance, this old woman is conservatively estimated to be over 65, and her face is so unattractive. She has been walking with her head raised since entering the village, with a smile on her face. Perhaps this is the main wife, and she has to help her man come to the Sue family to take concubines and fragrant flowers by pinching her nose. What should fragrant flowers be? They belong to those who are not weak in their 50s. He looks like a person with a hanging eye. Oh my goodness, then if that's the case, will you really let the granny lead a wealthy old man? Wait a minute, why don't you just give up if you have money? Isn't that what Yulin has been thinking about? Yulin, look out quickly. They brought a donkey cart. You can guess whether there is a car, a house, or a registered residence in the town by looking at this style. Don't carry it. Pack up your bags and go with you quickly. Go back to coax the old man. You can also let your stepfather help you to get married and start a family. What a mess. The two women who came were the old mother and daughter. In law of Zhao Dashan, the town constable. I'm here to divorce my grandson and her granddaughter. Zhao Lao Tai was very angry. Why did you still mention her old man? He has been dead for many years. His old man suffered a lot while he was alive, and even if he died, he would have his head covered in feces. Please treat her old man well. Zhao Dashan's wife couldn't stop her mother. In law's words in time. Originally, upon entering the hospital, Zhao Dashan's wife was quite happy when she heard Mrs. Sue say she would give up. At that moment, she sincerely praised Mrs. Sue in her heart. This aunt was quite self-aware and knew that if the family was not in charge, she would refuse. And I also understand why Mrs. Sue hurriedly said that before they entered the room. On the one hand, if the man expresses remorse before the woman, it will make the Sue family unable to lift their heads in the village. On the other hand, they vaguely explain the reason, but firmly refuse to express their intention to prevent them from entering the room with anger. If they say nitpicking and unpleasant things, it will hurt the girl's face. Actually, this is also the result she most wants. Zhao Dashan's wife really doesn't want people to know that her son has a verbal engagement with this Sue family girl from the bottom of her heart. If that happens, her son will not be able to raise the threshold for blind dates in the future. It is rumored that even the style of the Sue family girl has been considered by her Zhao family, and in the future, any cowardly person will have a strong desire to marry into her Zhao family. So, Zhao Dashan's wife also thinks it's good not to open up and speak clearly. If she hadn't been thinking about one last thing to ask for, she would have turned around and left if she wanted Mrs. Sue to say her stubborn man the same refusal again. But who would have thought that these three women were chattering their tongues, infuriating her mother. In law. In a blink of an eye, her mother. In law revealed that her son had a verbal engagement with Su Tianqin. This old lady Sue's face is also black. She really didn't want the villagers to know that her granddaughter and she went to the city yesterday to make the man's father see her. Judging from each other, it is quite a big deal. Here, we pay attention to the orders of parents and the words of matchmakers, so that fathers can make decisions on their children's marriages. That was filmed before, regardless of whether it was filmed or not, it can be said that it doesn't sound good in the future, so I don't want to reveal the truth. But it was unexpected that there were too many scandals left by the original Mrs. Sue. Where did this episode come from? The memory is very blurry, and I don't know when my original self boasted about fighting with the villagers, which was like pulling my wife's tongue and making me anxious. Anyway, let's just talk quickly. I once slapped my hands and jumped high, making me angry. Hey, you're jealous. I'm not like you. One day, I hug a monkey tightly, and two monkeys hug each other and treat each other as a precious egg. I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed. It's just your old wrinkled face. Even mosquitoes dare not step down, afraid of spraining their feet. Even if I go into another house, I have to find a wealthy person. A good person like me doesn't have to worry. Why laugh? If we can't find someone of the same age, let's talk to an old man. Who has talked to that monkey in your house? After that verbal altercation, some villagers who love to chew on their tongues have a pure sense of inferiority. In reality, they mock and pretend to advise. Do you really want to find an old man who can be your father? How old are we? If he were to be your father again, it wouldn't work. Don't tease me with this matter, don't advise me. Go persuade the old man. As long as he has plenty of land and little to do, I can say it on my own. If you can help me introduce him to the world, I would like to thank your 8th-generation ancestors. Mrs. Su, the original woman, gave a generous answer, but I didn't expect someone to take it seriously. Not a few people chewed her tongue, which even affected this matter today. This is just a mess. At the same time, the live broadcast room is flashing the screen. This is not a live broadcast room that the assistant can close. The host is Milk, and Grandma needs to read the password before the live broadcast can be closed. I want to see Grandma Xianghua. I'm so anxious. Where's the camera? Please aim at Grandma who is fragrant and has melons. On the first day of live streaming, fragrant flowers became fragrant melons. The conversation seemed to have passed for a long time, but with Su Tianxin, it was just a blink of an eye, and she still held up the nest head that had only taken a bite. Su Tianxin silently turned around and looked into the courtyard. Satisfying the onlookers in the live broadcast room was secondary, mainly because she was afraid that if Milk was to suffer losses, it would be convenient for her to rush out. Okay, it doesn't seem like she's needed. When did her aunt float out with her milk? And in the future, my grandmother is rushing people. I didn't agree with what I said first, any further words are unnecessary. The truth has been revealed, and Mrs. Su still maintains her rationality. After all, speaking too closely is more likely to result in losing more words. Sometimes a good word can be spread in several versions, not to mention this kind of gossip about breaking off a marriage agreement. If you can say less, you can talk less about it for others. Yu Qingyang went to the wall to fetch a broom. Although the scene was awkward, it could give people a step down. The meaning was not to rush people, her family really needs to sweep the yard. Unfortunately, there is a lack of coordination due to the difficulty of using one's brain. Zhao Sheriff's old mother looked down on the Su family from the bottom of her heart and thought to herself, oh, just because your family is willing to emphasize that they don't agree to the marriage first, how can we have the confidence? We should also express our disapproval first. Also, because of the episode just now, I wanted to give a couple of embarrassing comments to the Su family. My granddaughter's grandmother is still an unscrupulous person. She is an old man who is not honest and widowed. There's no need to drive people in. I didn't even want to enter your house. But there are a few words we need to say before, don't turn back. We'll leave, and your family will come looking for you again. A shameless person, I'm much older now. After all, if it weren't for my son's longing to go to war with your dead son, the people in your village wouldn't have been able to come into contact with him, right? These words made the three women who were watching the excitement unwilling to listen and pouted. Not to mention Mrs. Su. Oh my goodness, I saw your cow shaking its tail and driving you crazy. I didn't even want to enter my house, bah. When you leave, I'll have to sprinkle incense ash in my yard to make you feel nauseous. What kind of bird are you when the old hen goes up to the roof, and the pig's nose is stuck in a green onion to see your pretense? Isn't your family from Gayazi village in Shicheng town? They're all villagers pretending to be big-tailed wolves. Your son has returned from the battlefield and is destined to be a catcher. You're in a hurry and haven't washed the mud off your feet, so you've forgotten your book. Zhao Dashan's mother was so worried that she was infuriated by Su Laotai's words. Since her son moved to town to become a constable, no one dares to point fingers and curse at her. No match, your grandparents and grandchildren spent a lot of money on our children's meals. You look like you can't afford it. I've checked at the tavern before, and even the waiter remembers that your granddaughter is a greedy and gluttonous person, with her eyes fixed on food. Su Tianxin heard the word rice bucket in the room and silently put down the steamed bun in his hand. And this is truly infuriating old lady Su. If most people had the mentality of taking over before and were helping their original bodies clean up these junk things, then now she's really getting angry. After all, it's all just a quarrel. The two children haven't met before, so it's okay for adults to argue with each other. Don't scold the children. Isn't that annoying? As a result, she didn't criticize the other party's grandson, and the Lao Zhao family called her granddaughter a loser. Wangkai, Ba, a name that even dogs can call. I'll tell you, I can't even hear your grandson's name at all. Who are you calling a dog's name? Your grandson's dog name. Your granddaughter is a loser. The battle between intangible cultural heritage began in a neat manner, and the two old ladies were talking and tearing it apart. Zhao Laotai is old, and she only knows how to retreat. Tue, keep spitting at Su Laotai. Mrs. Su is really amazing. She can double her magic attacks. Not only can she use both hands, but she can also play fast-paced music with both hands, as if directing a chorus. She can also curse without repeating her words. The daughter-in-law on both sides argued and said, Gaha, let's talk about it and take action. Mother. At this moment, Zhao Dashan dismounted and strode in. Thank you, beautiful ladies, for casting more monthly in recommended tickets. Thank you to the following book enthusiasts for giving a reward. Thank you to Night Eagle Grace for giving a starting amount of 10,000 coins. Shanju number 2 will receive a reward of 1,600 starting coins, while being blown by the wind in the summer will receive a reward of 500 starting coins. Chi Kai Wings reward 500 starting coins. It's your long, give a reward of 300 starting coins. A reward of 100 starting coins will be given for the vast sea and sky. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Automatic Unlocking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Automatic Unlocking. Zhao Laotai is arrogant and coaxing in front of the Su family, but she dares not in front of her third son. On the one hand, she is afraid that her son's temper will drive her back to Gayazi village, and how can she not be allowed to enjoy happiness in the town in the future? She doesn't care whether she goes back to the village or where she is going at the moment. Being looked up at and surrounded by others to chat is all thanks to the face of this third son. On the other hand, I also feel guilty in my heart. When she was conscripted, she didn't see what this son could achieve, so she picked out Zhao Dashan among several sons and reported him. I still haven't forgotten the scene when Zhao Dashan heard that his family had decided to part ways with him and looked up at her. So I want to set up a genealogy of elders. Ordering this third son is useless. I can only cry. Son, you've come down now. Look at this family. I haven't even said anything yet, and I almost got scratched into a bloody gourd. Mrs. Su was tidying up her hair bun that had been caught with a few strands of hair. Upon hearing this, she thought to herself. Hee, I didn't expect it to be Longjing in 1982, old green tea. But don't act like she doesn't like tea. She plans to ignore any son or grandson, and anyone who comes will quickly roll the calf for her. Mrs. Su decided that she would never behave like she did yesterday. When she heard that the other party was a constable, she immediately posted on it to exchange the friendship between her deceased eldest son and the other party for some light of life. What can I do to imply that my granddaughter has no father or mother and no support? It will be difficult to find her husband's family in the future. It's just nagging about how few sons in the family don't have much ability. It's like a constable hiring anyone to be a subordinate is a trick, and being able to arrange work for your sons is like doing something really embarrassing. Although we are poor, we work hard and use our hands to earn money. We don't look at those who have no boundaries, don't envy or socialize, and if we can't make money, we can save on our stomachs. She doesn't believe it anymore. If a dwarf sticks their head to it, they can die. So when Mrs. Su finished speaking, she would even curse Zhao Dashan when she opened her mouth. But Zhao Dashan took the lead. "Auntie, I'm so sorry. I'll apologize to you on behalf of my mother and my wife. Don't be like them." After speaking, Zhao Dashan frowned and looked at Mrs. Zhao and his wife. "Mom, haven't you said anything yet? As far away, I heard you scolding my daughter, the daughter of the Oda brothers, louder than louder. The person was specifically sent by me with a message. To be honest with you, I've been wanting to see my aunt and my brother's unique seedlings since I was transferred here. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't get away from them and had just transferred here, I should have come to visit them long ago. I also insisted on dragging my aunt and child to eat. If it weren't for you and Wang Kai Nyang going to the countryside on a whim, I would have planned to have my aunt and Tian Xin sit at home. I was still thinking that I shouldn't just be called to the restaurant like this. You guys were so lucky that they ran over to make a scene. One size mother is confused, and you are also confused. Did I inform you yesterday that I had a close relationship with brother Yu Tian? Zhao Dashan's wife shrank her neck from the moment her man entered the hospital. Her man did explain to her a lot last night, saying that without Su Yu Tian, he would have died a long time ago. That means someone on the battlefield can pull you and dodge arrow feather. If someone is unconscious and injured, and they don't want to be treated, they will throw them into the pile of corpses. That's called a lifesaver. Even being able to become a constable today, her man said, was also an opportunity given by Su Yu Tian. Because Su Yu Tian was conscripted for less than half a year and was promoted to be the leader of these people, the last time her man went to the battlefield was when Su Yu Tian was assigned to the team guarding the city tower. Su Yu Tian rushed out and never returned. It also stems from her man always following Su Yu Tian to do things, and Su Yotian's performance is impressive. People above him even have an impression of him, so he didn't go back to the village to farm like others, but was taken away to work with him. More than a month ago, he returned to his hometown and became a catcher with an iron rice bowl. Zhao Dashan's daughter.in.law recalled last night when her man mentioned the red circles under Su Yotian's eyes. Now that she was questioned, her heart trembled even more. But this Su family girl can't be her daughter.in.law. She went to the restaurant yesterday and made a special inquiry. I heard that the girl had a dark face and a loud voice when talking. Her eyes were only focused on eating, and she didn't eat like she didn't go to a good restaurant. She flaunted her food to the death as if she had never seen her before, and she couldn't stand the show. Her son is also her lifeline. Since the man was conscripted, she has been eyeing her only son. The family's life has finally improved. How could she marry such a daughter.in.law into the house? So she only encouraged her mother.in.law to come to the Su family this morning. Thinking about making her mother.in. law speak more difficult and show that the women in her family are not easy to get along with, it would be best to make the Su family give up first. If the Su family is really shameless and can't change a stubborn man's mentality even if they drag on until the end, she will acknowledge it by pinching her nose, and it can also be considered as giving a warning to her unmarried daughter.in.law in advance. The development of the matter went surprisingly smoothly, and without saying anything, they successfully withdrew from the marriage, but Zhao Dashan's daughter.in.law only flipped her mind a few times and came up with a solution. She first looked at the crowd of villagers standing inside and outside the courtyard, watching the excitement. She understood that she would rather let everyone know that her son was the one who was expelled first than appease her man and not get angry. One size father, my mother and I have no other intentions. We thought about admitting our family, but when we entered the courtyard, my aunt said that we should handle that matter. My mother may not have thought that our son could still be despised, so she was quite angry. Hurry up and pull it down, the three old women who saw from beginning to end suddenly interjected, don't you also say you're here to withdraw? You still think we're from the village? Zhao Dashan's daughter-in-law choked, why are these three troublemakers everywhere? Looking at Zhao Dashan's expression, she didn't dare to delay and quickly spoke up. She was afraid that the three women would recite the conversation, so she had to slap them repeatedly to lead the performance. Isn't that because the shop assistant said that the girl's house can eat? The child's father is really rushing to talk, my mother and I misunderstood. Zhao Laotai also realized this and wiped away her tears, saying, that's what the waiter said about being a foodie. The waiter's original words said that if they say they don't eat, they won't be polite when they eat. Their hair is sticky, and their feet are muddy. Zhao Dashan is not so easy to be fooled. But at this moment, he was accompanied by Li Zheng, and there were more than 10 villagers from his neighbors watching inside and outside the courtyard. They turned around and left, but it was not a big deal. His aunt's family would be pointed at, and the only daughter of the Tian brothers, Miao, was a girl with a thin face. Zhao Dashan pulled his face and shouted, I've seen it before. It's a big deal, and only Wang Kai can't match Tian Xiner. Outsiders are talking nonsense. If the Su family can accept this marriage, it's all for my sake. I can't even ask for it. Zhao Laotai argued logically, is this kind of request still necessary? Are you confused, Sanair? Even the waiter said that this kind of request does not require a dowry. Mother. Zhao Dashan's daughter-in-law also spoke up to stop her. She quickly changed her mind and then apologized to Mrs. Su, saying, Auntie, I'm sorry, everyone has a bad temper. My mother-in-law did hear others talk a lot, and her tone of voice became a bit aggressive. Don't be so angry, you have to come home and sit down. I'll slaughter chickens and geese to treat Auntie then. Yesterday, my child's father scolded me and told me why I didn't tell him in advance when I went out, which made you not step into the house. He felt quite upset. Mrs. Su watched this scene, and this daughter-in-law was more thoughtful than that mother-in-law. She would coax men and give them steps. Although I don't want to borrow the spotlight from the constable in the future, it's best to keep in touch. But now that I've reached this point, it's better to explain the matter to my granddaughter clearly than anything else, and this step will be taken. Alright, there's no need to apologize for that. After all, I really don't agree with my granddaughter and your young man meeting and looking at each other. I'll go back on my word. This time, Zhao Dashan was very surprised. He never expected his wife's words to be true. The Su family retreated and said, Auntie, although that young man from Wang Kai is not talented, he knows a few words and has a kind temperament. When he comes back to work as an accountant, the couple's life is not bad. As Zhao Dashan spoke, he looked straight in his eyes and glanced at the nearby villagers. Yesterday was rushed, and today everyone happened to be present to testify. If you have any requests, please bring them up. I'm reluctant to let Tian Shiner stay for a few more years. Let my young man wait. If there are any other aspects, please feel free to speak up. Zhao Dashan remembers that yesterday, old lady Su mentioned that it was difficult for her granddaughter to get married and meet in the town. It's not difficult either. His family has a small population, and if his aunt really gets discouraged because of this reason, he can publicly promise to stay at his house and take care of him like a half-mother. The onlookers in Erdo village were all a bit confused. What's the situation? Can that thin and black girl from the old Su family, who even does needlework carelessly, be asked to marry like this? The old man who is a constable will become an accountant in the future, and he will still be an only child. Isn't everything saved up in the family just a couple? In the eyes of the villagers, this is a grandson-in-law whom they dare not even dream of, and Mrs. Su is crazy enough to extrapolate. It's just a push. Without standing at her doorstep boasting about her family's achievements and abilities, Mrs. Su firmly refused again. If you really want to talk about your relationship with Yulin, I really disagree. Let's go. I haven't had breakfast this morning, so I won't keep you. I hope everyone can vote more and support this small sapling with me. Thank you to the following book enthusiasts for tipping. Thank you to the book enthusiasts for tipping 6,000 starting coins on 201907230931130097. Thank you to Gao Jian for giving a reward of 5,000 starting coins. Thank you Alice5555 for giving a reward of 1,500 starting coins. Thank you, Zionanzi66, Peach Blossoms are young and young. Reward 100 starting coins for attracting wealth and treasures. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Copper Smell. That's how it comes about. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Copper Smell. That's how it comes about. Zhao Dashan blamed his mother and daughter.in.law in his heart. Aunt Sue would back down, only to find that none of his daughters are good. Zhao Dashan left the sight of the villagers in Erdo and rode away without even saying hello, throwing down his mother and daughter.in.law on the donkey cart. Zhao Dashan's wife was very anxious when she saw the man's appearance. It is estimated that her home will not clear up for several days, and no one will dare to speak during meals. But when she heard her mother.in.law sitting next to her crying, for some reason, she felt relieved. Zhao Dashan's daughter.in.law thought to herself, "Mother-in-law, this time you finally know that your son and you have been separated for a long time. People don't even care about you in front of you, and they scold you for not having a nose or a face. I would rather hold Aunt Sue than take a second glance at you. Don't be unaware of the taste. This is the result of your biased and unscrupulous behavior back then, retribution. So be more conscious and hurry back to the village to take care of yourself." Zhao Dashan's daughter.in.law didn't hear any crying and didn't give a word of advice. But in fact, Mrs. Zhao was not saddened by her son's infidelity with her. Didn't she know about this long ago? Knowing that we should also live with this son, enjoying happiness is the real thing. What can we do if we are not sad about other injuries? She cried because she had a lot of powerful words, like that Mrs. Su, which sounded scary, but when she scolded her, she didn't remember how to say them. She hated her for not keeping up, and the more she thought about it, the more angry she became. Mrs. Zhao turned around to look at the gradually distant courtyard of the Su family, with a face full of unwillingness. She wanted to go back and fight back with that stinky woman from the Su family. Once again, she can definitely perform well. At the same time, Lu Lijing from Erdo village was rushing to watch the lively villagers at the Su family's doorstep, saying, "You all have nothing to do, haven't you? You've already had enough to eat in the morning. Especially the three of you." Lu Li was scolding the three women. "It's too busy for you three to talk about other people's family affairs. You don't need to watch the excitement when the house collapses in the rainstorm tomorrow. There's no place to cry. Fill me with earth." That couldn't stop everyone carrying hose and carrying poles, discussing while walking. "No wonder I made such a fuss when I came back yesterday, causing trouble until midnight. Otherwise, I'm a kind person and didn't say anything about holding on to death. Hey! You guys, why did she push that grandson.in.law out? It's not like her. Can it be something she rushed to?" Last night, Mrs. Su was almost out of breath and was likely entangled by a little ghost. What little devil, humph. With just a pout of her buttocks, I knew what kind of shit she was going to do. You're extrapolating, you're trying to catch someone by saying something ironic. That hanging-eyed young man is really good at pinching people. If you don't believe me, just look back. A distant resident inquired, "What happened on that side?" "Ah, you guys don't know yet, Emma. It's so lively. The matter of the bucket and the dog." On Mrs. Su's side, there is no discussion behind the scenes from the air traffic control team. She waved to her granddaughter while she was still in the yard, indicating that she didn't look at Bielu's side and wanted to send away her daughter-in-law first. "Why are you crying?" Yu Qingyang turned her back and said. "No." She blames her man and two young uncles for not having the ability, which is why the only child in the eldest brother's family has suffered such injustice. Even if one uncle is more successful, it wouldn't be like this. It can be said that these are of no use. They, who are uncles and aunts, have not lost their skills for a day or two, and they are not at home yet. Mrs. Su wrapped 2 pieces of dry food in a cloth tray and thought about adding 2 more to pass to her daughter-in-law. "I didn't hear Li Jing shouting for work, so you still have the leisure to wipe your tears. With food, warehouses, and silver, you're not at home. Normally, a family should have a strong labor force. If you don't get up early and work more in the dark, others will have to be more picky. Are you trying to make me carry stones? The autumn harvest has been completed. According to the village's correct mind, the whole village should carry stones together to prevent rainstorm from flooding the village if the water level rises again." But fortunately, Li Jing also understood in his heart that the harvest had been poor for 2 consecutive years. Before freezing, the men had to hunt and go out to find work, hoping to earn some copper coins to support their families. Taking advantage of the green scenery still visible on the mountain, even the elderly, weak, and sick scholars had to dig wild vegetables and chop firewood every day. Every household had to do a lot of work, but he gritted his teeth and said that a family must provide a strong labor force. Yu Qingyang became anxious and said, "Nyang, I'll change into clothes and leave now." "You don't need to go, I can handle 2 on my own." "Stop, there's no need to change. From now on, let's do whatever our family wants. There's no need to make a big name out of it." Upon hearing these words, Yu Qingyang paused and felt sad again in her heart. "Look, my mother-in-law has completely given up on them. Anyway, she won't be able to make a name for herself, so why bother pretending?" The front foot of the gate closed, and old lady Su pulled her granddaughter in front of her and said to the old irons in the broadcast room. "I'm sorry, my family. You've seen this all going on, one after another. I didn't expect everyone to laugh on the first day of the live broadcast." Su Tianxin said, "Milk, although I laughed, the live broadcast room was also full of praise on the screen. It's like her breast scratching on that side, and the live broadcast room is cheering on this side. Ah! Can it still be like this?" Su Tianxin continued to tell him that during the fight, there were actually over 300 people watching. There are still many who want to learn to curse, fearing that traditional culture will be lost. More than 300 people. Mrs. Su is a bit confused. In the past, the production team held meetings to organize learning, and there were only so many people sitting in the venue in Wuyang and Wuyang. Mrs. Su rarely gets embarrassed, and she doesn't know if there are any young children in the live broadcast room. When parents ask where they learned the insults and say how good it is to watch a grandmother live stream. Why bother learning to curse? No need to learn. As soon as you get older, this skill will automatically unlock. Mrs. Su recited the password while everyone was laughing. "I will definitely send it this year, click." Until this moment, the old lady asked if she could no longer see her, right? After receiving a positive answer, he lay on the Kang and pounded his heart. "I'm not really angry." The old lady grabbed her granddaughter's hand and rubbed it, feeling extremely distressed. Thanks to our child's intelligence, they knew in ancient times that men and women were not allowed to appear in public, otherwise they would have been criticized even more. Remembering in modern times, her granddaughter's neighbors were not allowed to compliment anyone she met. She spoke slowly and softly, which was polite, pure, and beautiful, with excellent character and education. At this point, with a bucket of food, sticky hair, black face, and muddy mud, the dead women were scolding our children one word after another while arguing with her. So she regretted doing this battle a little bit. If she had a better temper, she shouldn't have been too talkative. Just drive her away. Milk, please release my hand first. I want to see how to download the settlement reminder. What settlement? Su Tianxin was pleasantly surprised and said, Milk, even though we haven't received our salary yet, there are 6 people offering rewards. According to the time display, it should have been during your battle. Mrs. Su immediately sat up, her heart no longer bulging, and her arms and legs no longer hurt. How much reward should I give? 120.8 yuan. According to the rules, if 1 yuan in modern times is equivalent to 1 copper plate in ancient times, then 120.8 copper plates will be obtained. How much silver is given to fight a war? Madam Zhao, come back to me and we can make up for 1 or 2 by playing 10 or 8 games together. If anyone dares to promise to give so many rewards on the field, she will go out tomorrow to provoke. Wait, where's the money? Su Tianxin was also very puzzled. Although it was indicated that the exchange had been successful, it was not in his pocket. So it should be in some corner of the house, right? As soon as Tian Xian finished speaking, his grandmother began rummaging through boxes and cabinets. In fact, this scene was a bit pointless without a live broadcast. This guy rummaged through it, and the grandparents and grandchildren were so tired that they both lay on the Kang and couldn't find any money. It was almost a top 10 unsolved mystery. Mrs. Su scolded the god of wealth in a low voice, I think it was intentional. Write it clearly about how money came from, where the money was placed, and almost write those 2 words. Su Tianxin suddenly got off the Kang and flipped out a small box. The box where her milk is most sensitive was previously filled with dragon heritage pills. I heard my aunt gave it to her, but my grandmother asked me to throw it into a corner. Milk, look. Mrs. Su glanced inside and saw that there were 128 yuan coins and not a single copper coin. She paused and said, so that's how the copper smell comes from. Their 128 yuan was also the money that the beautiful girls gave me yesterday. Don't you think it's a coincidence, ha ha ha. Thank you, Lu Bao Bao, for giving us a reward of 500 starting coins. Don't forget to vote after watching, beautiful girls. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Outside the nickname. Money hidden in the Kang mat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Outside the nickname. Money hidden in the Kang mat. Milk, please slow down and don't hunch over. Mrs. Su twisted her body and was about to open the Kang mat, which was covered with a thick layer of straw. She put 128 yuan in the straw and said, don't tell anyone, the money is hidden here. If you spend money, come here and take it. Su Tianxin chuckled and said, Milk, do you think I still have some money to use right now? In modern times, the hobby of reading and playing with things can only be achieved gradually in the future. Not to mention hobbies, even the professional knowledge one has learned over the years should be considered in the long run, and there will be no practical application in the short term. Because she was a proctologist who relieved those with hemorrhoids of their worries, she had little potential for gender restriction in ancient times. Fortunately, due to professional reasons, she still has one advantage that can help her grandmother and the family, which is that her emotions are relatively stable. You see, although the road ahead is vast and far from the food and clothing they want, didn't you earn 128 yuan on this first day? Mrs. Su looked at her granddaughter's smiling face under the Kang and thought to herself, there will be a day when you don't have anything to do and take some money out to spend, you trust me. The smile paused and she quickly instructed, don't tell your aunt or those uncles of yours yet. The few people in my memory are pretty good, but my memory doesn't count. Old Lady Su, who was originally a woman, felt quite good. She thought she had good social connections in the village, but others didn't realize that her family was quite poor. In fact, the people in the village all cared about her behind the scenes, so she had to slowly appreciate those sons and daughter.in law. Moreover, whether she is selfish or biased, no matter how good those few are, even if they are good enough, she will designate her granddaughter to come first, and she will be the one who completes the task. For example, if you eat an egg, your granddaughter will finish it and it's her turn, while others will at most continue to wait. Old Madame Sue was afraid that her child would be too honest and would not lie. She followed her since childhood and waited until her granddaughter nodded her head. Then she was relieved and said happily, "Our grandparents and grandchildren finally saw a little light." My heart was very bright at once. This is only 128 This year, the price of rice has soared, and it is enough to buy a few kilograms of white rice for you to cook some rice congee. Slowly save some today, save some tomorrow, and slowly our granary will be filled. After finishing speaking, she smiled and picked up the small box containing the Dragon Legacy pill. She had forgotten what had been stored before, and only remembered that the money was enough. This was the small box she had provided afterwards. In fact, she had to admit that their grandparents and grandchildren were still very close to each other, and money had to come from here for a reason. While climbing inside the Kang and placing boxes, Mrs. Sue and her granddaughter continued to showcase their sense of achievement, saying, "I guess that Zhao Dashan only earns 245 taels a year. He will endure the Chinese New Year and send out some things during the holidays. This guy has made his mother and daughter-in-law miserable, and he wants to tie them up to heaven. Look at how much we earn in a day. Although it's impossible for people to give us tips every day, we haven't received any salary yet. Didn't the God of Wealth say that as long as we collect a certain number of likes, we will still receive monthly salary?" Su Tianxin's praise is correct. Grandma is the best. Grandma's live streaming is also equivalent to having a secure job, so they need to record more high-quality videos so that those who missed the live streaming can still watch the recording. Are there any specific conditions? The old lady couldn't see those words and needed to ask her granddaughter. Yes, as soon as the live broadcast started this morning, there were many rules out, but I haven't had time to watch them yet. Take a look, come back and summarize it for Milk. We can't just live aimlessly by boiling dumplings in noodles, tea, and soup. I'll just go and boil a few pots of water first. Mrs. Sue plans to take advantage of the weather to finally clear up and pickle vegetables in the next few days. Otherwise, if it starts raining again one day, it will be over and let it dry out. I need to have my granddaughter wash her hair and take a shower before boiling a few more pots of water. She knows that even if she doesn't mention it, she will feel uncomfortable. The original body of Tian Xin had black mud all over her neck, and her hair was too long to be washed easily. You all say that dead Zhao old lady's insults are unpleasant, her hair is sticky, and on closer reflection, what you want to say is the truth. Taking advantage of the absence of anyone at home, the first thing even she does is to take care of personal hygiene. Mrs. Sue went to the backyard twice and specially carried back 2 large stacks of hay with a shoulder strap. The straw ash burned later had a lot of uses, not just for bathing. Su Tianxin quickly browsed through the area and went to the stove. She saw her grandmother picking mushrooms while boiling water. She pulled the mushroom basket over and planned to take over the task. This mushroom was still picked by her ancestors and grandchildren, and she saw it yesterday when it was floating in the sky. The original body should have been carrying mushrooms to Captain Zhao. I wanted to go to the house for the first time without empty hands, and there was nothing to give. So I got up early and walked all the way to the town to pick mushrooms. I didn't expect to start a family, and Captain Zhao didn't want to carry it back. He didn't even pick it, and if he didn't pick it again, it would be much whiter. You child, are you in a hurry to finish reading it and then come out? You don't need to do it, what will you do? I'll just play around and finish it in a few seconds. Old Lady Sue habitually didn't let her granddaughter reach out. Milk, I am a person with memories, and you have forgotten this again. Afraid that Grandma would keep repeating the same old routine with memories, and if it were to be done, it would be a different kind of chatter, she hurriedly said, Milk, I think the rules are quite difficult. It's not like we pay every month. What, have you changed your mind? Not to mention, we need to have 50 live broadcasts and have at least 5,000 followers in the live broadcast room before we can start paying salaries. Whether we can pay salaries next month depends on how many days we can record 50 broadcasts. Mrs. Su quickly asked, how long does it take to count as a game? Each live broadcast lasts for more than 2 hours. If there is not enough time, such as suddenly dropping the broadcast, even if someone tries to play, the reward will be confiscated, not including the number of sessions. Mrs. Su's first reaction was that she was not acting like a hooligan. The god of wealth also snatched money. This is really becoming more and more stingy. Everyone rewards her, why should she withhold it? Then I felt a little lucky again. Fortunately, this morning we had steamed buns and fought for 2 hours. Otherwise, we would have been busy if we didn't know what to do. Milk, have you noticed? Actually, it's not difficult to have clearly written terms. You can watch 50 shows in just 2 hours. The difficulty is to quickly get 5,000 people to follow the live broadcast room in a short period of time, which requires a high level of content richness. For example, if you want early arrivals to stay focused, the content cannot be too repetitive. If you want late arrivals to follow immediately, the content must be exciting. Mrs. Su, however, doesn't worry too much. Family members, I have all the personas you want, Grandma. Really, as long as you don't leave. Let's talk about the money. The key is how much to give. Salary will be paid based on 1/10 of the number of followers. For example, if there are 5,000 followers, it will be the basic salary. At least half a tael of silver will be paid per month. In addition, there are also 10 single calculation lighting signs that will be given a copper plate, and 1,000 likes will be given a copper plate. In modern lighting, it costs 10 cents to give a thumbs up, it doesn't cost any money, and people like it constantly. It doesn't sound like much, but in fact, it adds up quite a lot. In addition, there are 2 modules that are currently blocked. Su Tianxin has studied them and it seems that they are rules that she does not currently have the qualifications to view. She will not mention them to her grandmother at the moment to avoid being curious. In short, it is still the same sentence. The god of wealth will never give them money for free, they must rely on their abilities. As for her skills, Su Tianxin has pondered before. If grandma doesn't have much to show, she can learn and practice dissecting and killing pigs with the people here when necessary. She should be able to live stream as a female butcher from a first-person perspective without any problem. If she practices ancient Chinese characters well and transcribes letters instead, she should be able to live stream and earn money at the same time. As for using expertise to earn money to cut hemorrhoids for people, she deliberately read the rules, but that's not enough. She won't let the ancient hemorrhoids show to modern people. Leaving aside her professional ethics, whether she will do this or not, mainly involving pornography, will make the money hidden in her milk bed disappear. Thank you all for voting. Thank you to the following book enthusiasts for their tips. Thank you for giving a starting amount of 10,000 yuan for the floating ice 1004, thank Ying Long for wanting to eat Gailingao and offering a reward of 1,500 yuan, thank you to the book friend for giving a reward of 700 starting coins on 202103302132313940. Thank you to Little Black Meow SS for giving a reward of 500 starting coins, thank you to book friend 2023032809144730 for giving a reward of 100 starting coins. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Although you can't make big money, you will save. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Although you can't make big money, you will save a water scoop made with gourd ladles, scooping out a large basin of water one by one. Mrs. Su asked her granddaughter to take a shower first. After her granddaughter finishes, she plans to use the remaining water to wash her. Although there is currently no shortage of water or even a flood here, there are no wells in her courtyard, and only 6 families in the village take advantage of their private wells. Because it is expensive, according to memory, drilling a well at the price of the previous 2 years would cost 5 taels of silver. Her house is located at the east end of the village, and carrying water requires walking a station. Yes, it's estimated that in modern society, bus stops are so far apart, so it's important to save some water, mainly because we can't afford them. I rely entirely on my daughter-in-law to carry water. Thanks to the fact that the Su family separated and obtained a large vat, their second son was also quite skilled and made many wooden pots to store water. Otherwise, there would be no place to choose. The plan was quite good, but old lady Su felt like she could only go out and insert a front door, then go to the wing room and toss a few bags of food out in the sun to hang in the courtyard. She turned inside and looked at her granddaughter's bathwater again. It seems like she can't handle it anymore. Su Tianxin was also a bit embarrassed. She hadn't used the sponge to rub it yet, so she just wiped a layer of black mud with her palm. Mrs. Su picked up the pulp of the loofah and rubbed it on her granddaughter's back, saying, "It seems that this family doesn't take showers much all year round. Otherwise, memory is unreliable." In Mrs. Su's memory, their old Su family already belonged to the beauty-loving and relatively clean family in the real village. If it were any cleaner, I would have been criticized for being poor and particular, but I didn't expect it to be so dirty. Su Tianxin felt a little relieved and said, "Fortunately, Grandma Su loves face and doesn't want people to know that she often eats elm noodles at home. She always reminds everyone to use a comb to shave their hair so that they don't grow so many lice. If there are too many lice, it will be even more troublesome." The love for face here has nothing to do with cleanliness, but there is an old saying that the firstborn flea is the poor, and having fleas at home is the rich. Grandma Su doesn't want people to know that her family is really poor, and often reminds everyone to catch lice when they have nothing to do. At least don't crawl your head when the two of you talk. And why does this conclusion come to be? Su Tianxin speculates that it should be caused by nutritional imbalance, or a single oil produced from coarse tea and plain rice that loves to grow lice. A lot of lice means that our family eats poorly. The large number of fleas indicates that there are a large number of livestock raised at home. I remember that she has a little sister named Mai Miao in this village. Although she is only in her early teens, she knows a lot of gossip and shares it with her. I once talked to her and said that there are boys with strong vanity who deliberately catch fleas and put them on their bodies. In this way, when they meet girls or go out to walk and make friends, they want the other person to misunderstand that there are many livestock in his family with good conditions. Anyway, it can play a role in making people look up. There are several young people like this in their village. Just like modern men who love luxury cars and envy those who have cows, sheep, pigs, and even horses at home, this is why they intentionally catch fleas and put them on their bodies. Su Tianxin didn't completely wash herself, feeling that she couldn't clean it all at once. After roughly rubbing and drying, she quickly put on her clothes and carried the shower water to the backyard with her grandmother. Scoop out some shower water containing plant ash and water the non-rotting roots under the big tree separately. The backyard of the Su family is still very large, so it should be said that every household here has a very large backyard. If you can't afford too much land, you have to have a large garden and plant it like a vegetable garden. This is also why Mrs. Su cannot go outside and complain that her home is too far from the place where the water is carried, which makes people feel affected. She is only a few houses away from the well. At this time, in addition to planting many potatoes, sweet potatoes, autumn cabbage, radish, winter melon, and cantaloupe in the backyard of the Su family, 4 large trees were also scattered around the edges and corners. Among them, there are 2 trees called Mali Guduo, which have hard and heat-resistant wood. The original intention of the Su family's planting it was not to make a fire, but rather for the second uncle Su Yuliang, who taught himself some carpentry skills. In his spare time, he would use this tree to make pipes and have his grandmother take them to the market for sale. It's the old-fashioned pipe for smoking dry cigarettes, specially made from this kind of tree to look beautiful and not crack. There is also a jujube tree, which was planted late. Su Tianxin visually observed that the diameter of the jujube tree was only about 10 centimeters, even after 7 or 8 years. Here, when a rural woman gets married, anyone willing to use jujube trees to make a bed as a dowry is equivalent to a modern family with average economic conditions giving their daughter 300,000 yuan as a dowry. It can be imagined that this is an act of spending money. And the year when the jujube tree was planted was the year when Su Tianxin, the father of this body, was conscripted. At that time, several uncles were not very old, and the eldest uncle was only 14 years old. Big brother Su Yutian personally planted this tree and before leaving, instructed his younger brothers that it was left for his daughter. If you come back unscathed, remember to chop down this tree to make a bed and take it to your mother-in-law's house when Tianxin got married. So at this moment, my grandmother patted the trunk of the jujube tree and muttered, "Okay, whatever it is, we're still alive. If we don't let it go, it's like we're still alive. Don't blame us, sigh." In fact, compared to modern times, this place is full of hardworking people. There is no such thing as enduring death in modern times. The key is that I haven't eaten anything yet, so I just ate the big rice in a small wooden barrel that's half an arm high. The vegetables and my granddaughter ate separately, and then it was gone. Su Tianxin had just finished taking a shower and her hair was semi-dry, which was already a bit cold. Upon hearing this, there happened to be a gust of evil wind that made her even colder. What's wrong with being a doctor before? Being a doctor is also afraid of death. Her modern best friend, a surgeon, always drags her to the toilet when she goes to the funeral home. And the reason why she hesitated to choose dermatology or proctology back then was because the mortality rate was low, fluctuating only around 0.1%. When a severe illness occurred, the whole department would attach great importance to it, and when she died, she wished to be featured in local news, with news headlines bearing the word "shock." Besides, she has also experienced time travel, so she needs to put some faith in her heart in the future. As for the last tree of the Su family, it is planted next to the thatched cottage and is also the rarest one in Su Tianxin, called the lateral cypress leaf tree. This cypress leaf can be used to wash hair. It is commonly used to treat blood heat hair loss and can also produce black hair. Occasionally soaking in water and drinking it also has some cough relieving and phlegm reducing effects. In addition, in the eyes of Dr. Su, drinking side cypress leaf tea soaked in bloody stool is also good, but not drinking too much can damage the digestive system. Like when she washed her hair just now, she used plant ash to filter water and also used cypress leaves. Milk, is there still water left to irrigate the garden? Still watering. That's even more waterlogging. It's been sunny for 2 days now, and with just one step, it's still muddy. Mrs. Su looked at the sweet potatoes with a heart-wrenching expression, hoping that they would be able to handle her hunger. I don't know if it will have a rotten sweet potato flavor when dug out and cooked later. But even so, it is still stronger than potatoes and sweet potatoes planted on 5 acres of wasteland next to the mountain. Potatoes and sweet potatoes in the garden were planted at different times from those on the wasteland, avoiding the heavy rainstorm at that time. In my memory, most of the sweet potato seedlings dug out from the wasteland had rotted away. The 40-minute tall adult plants were easily pulled out of the ground with just one pull, and their roots were soaked and broken. At that time, there were many families in the village who all patted their thighs and cried together. Isn't this not worth sacrificing their lives? Mrs. Su looked at other things again, but fortunately, there were many Chinese cabbage plants in the garden that could not drown. It couldn't rain too hard just because they needed a lot of water. It can only be said that autumn cabbage, radish, and winter melon with big horns are stronger than others, and they need to be harvested later. There is too much work to do on a sunny day, including pickling, harvesting, and cleaning up the cellar. Mrs. Su was calculating something in her mind, while directing her granddaughter to take all the swill buckets from the house. She wanted to use this shower water to clean the buckets, and the water should not be wasted at all. Brush out the worst-case wooden bucket and place it next to the thatched cottage, then use the toilet to wash your hands. Mrs. Sue thought to herself. You can't even mention going to the bathroom, otherwise you won't be able to eat. If you don't believe it, I'll show you the previous one. It's a waste of time. So when she was in charge, she had to provide a bucket for the thatched cottage. At the very least, when she came out, she had to wash her hands before coming in to the table to pick up dishes. Hurry up, we can't procrastinate anymore. I won't take a bath either. I'll just wipe my body with a cloth. Just rub your back and neck with milk to relieve the itching, and we'll start broadcasting. Ah. Su Tianxin was a bit surprised. Are you still broadcasting today? What are you broadcasting? To live a rural life, we need to work for a whole day. Mrs. Su already has a plan. Her second game will focus on stress relief, from sunrise to sunset, so that modern children can watch as they work. If they can't resist watching people work for a whole day, they will be exhausted. Su Tianxin had a good idea after a moment of contemplation. She would go and dismantle the bedding, take advantage of the clear weather to scrub all the bedding and mats in the house, and then wipe the lid and table properly. She would live stream with her grandmother while doing household chores without any delay. Grandma Su slapped her granddaughter in the direction and recited the command, "The God of wealth lives in my house." Then the broadcast began, followed by a wave of hair. So the opening effect of the second broadcast startled those who had just entered the live broadcast room, thinking that Sadako had arrived. My family, don't you see me with such long hair? I want to show you these 3,000 troubles, to my thighs. Thank you very much for voting, beautiful girls. Thank you for only reading books and not leaving messages. I will give you a reward of 1,500 starting coins. Thank you to the fans for giving an opaque reward of 400 starting coins. Thank you, the second girl from Xingli family, for giving a reward of 100 starting coins. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The smell of grass and wood ash that modern times can no longer smell. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The smell of grass and wood ash that modern times can no longer smell. No, I only have 15, not 3,000 threads, the length is rare, and the thickness is not good. Mrs. Su touched her own hair and said to the camera as if chattering, well, being bald is the same as dying regardless of who you are. We are still bald here, and we can't resist malnutrition with anything we use. When I get to know more about it at this age, after sleeping all night, I feel like my head will turn into dandelion, and the wind will blow away. You see, when it comes to nagging hair, it's just that the ancient people were too mysterious to be stubborn. I was unhappy one day. I ate shit and even played leisurely at the city tower. Happy is a day, make money now, with a live broadcast room. That's it. It's been 2 days since ancient times. What's so stubborn? Anyway, they can't believe it even if they kill someone. Okay, let's go at changing. You can treat it as watching a documentary about whether grandma is an ancient person or not, such as a large-scale ancient costume rural struggle drama, dinner drama, and suspense drama. Mrs. Su. By the way, she really has a long shadow. Changjing was laid off. I was thinking of providing my granddaughter with college education, but then I started working again. I used to do any small business. When the water is ready, Mrs. Su will simply make shampoo to wash her hair on the live broadcast. When the hair is dry, she plans to dish it for the old irons on the spot. Perhaps it would be done by hand, after all, it was the first time she had curled her hair in memory, but she felt that as long as she could curl up such long hair, her family would definitely find it fresh. It's a bit regrettable that my granddaughter is just a camera and can't be a model. Otherwise, old lady Su really thinks that by showing women of all ages ancient hairstyles and clothes, she can attract a group of loyal fans every day. In her eyes, this is all a business opportunity. In order to turn new fans into old fans, even grass and wood gray was introduced to her with a variety of tricks. Family members, look at the ash that Grandma scraped out of the stove for you. This is the ash of ordinary straw burning. We call it 100 straw frost. You take it and wrap it in fine cloth and filter it with water, see. After filtering the water, you can make foam. People in the village use it to wash their hair and clothes. If you don't believe it, go back and ask the old people at home. Maybe many people used it before. Mrs. Su gestured for the assistant to give Chow Muhue a close up. Su Tianxin immediately widened her eyes and took good care of her. Su Tianxin would like to add that the principle is that potassium carbonate hydrolyzes to an alkaline state and dissolves fats. On second thought, there are some in the live broadcast room that she understands better than her. She interjected so incoherently. Mrs. Su took out another black jar and looked down at how it was being buried. She quickly took it away and rubbed it with her sleeve before introducing, "This is the residue left from rapeseed oil extraction. Use the residue to smooth your hair, otherwise if your hair doesn't grow smoothly, it will be messy. Belongs to the ancient version of hair conditioner. And these filtered plant ash water, Mrs. Su only used a small portion, not all of them. She was directing her granddaughter to pour water on the back of her head with a gourd, while pouting in front of the basin and squinting her eyes, explaining. The rest, I want to make soda and save it for manta noodles. A bowl of straw ash and 2 bowls of water, place them in this ratio overnight, and the water filtered out the next day will turn pale yellow. At that time, if you boil the water over high heat again, the dry noodles left at the bottom of the pot will be alkaline. Why can't we eat it? If my family is curious about it, I will start broadcasting on time tomorrow morning. Come and see me stir-fry the alkali." Mrs. Su never forgets to constantly attract customers, and she does plan to make more stir-fried noodles once. There is no alkaline noodles in this house. The manta here is sour in my memory. It's not noisy or delicious. She used to open a noodle restaurant before crossing. That's not just bragging, it's just that I can't get busy. In modern times, there are few trusted relatives, and my granddaughter advises me not to be too tired to make it, otherwise I would have opened a branch long ago. At that time, she used the exclusive secret recipe of pingping grass to make alkali as a Lamian noodles agent. Therefore, manta pie is even easier for her. This kind of thing has long been played with by her. Mrs. Su thought of this and specially shared it with the family members in the live broadcast room. The alkaline water made from roasted sesame stalks is delicious, and the grass and wood ash cooked with straw almost smells. If you are curious, you can give it a try. Mrs. Su wiped her hair with a cloth. This guy's face towel is torn. It's almost time for a child to give up on a ring. In modern times, the cloth we use to wipe the floor is softer than here. Thinking of children, Mrs. Su looked at the camera and said, "Do you know that we use grass and wood ash to make moontime belts here? Children also use this mat. So it can be said that plant ash is very useful, as in ancient times it was not suitable for urination. It can also be used to wrap wounds, as it is said to kill bacteria and stop bleeding. In addition, after cutting the chives, cover the roots with a layer of plant ash, and the new chives will grow even better than before. You can also use this to grow potatoes. Cut the sprouting potatoes into pieces, wrap them in this 100 grass frost, and you can plant them in the soil. The potatoes will grow even more beautifully." Mrs. Su searched her memory for a moment and continued, "People here have diarrhea. The doctor also prescribed to dip cooked eggs in plant ash to eat. This is called the basic version of montmorillonite. There are also elderly people who have passed away, and they use it to fill the coffin, which can keep the body from rotting for a while. You don't need to ask, you know you don't believe it anymore. So, I'll ask whose family doesn't have it later." Before Mrs. Su could finish speaking, Su Tianxin quickly stopped and said, "Grandma, that's not allowed to be broadcasted. It's a pity not to allow live streaming. If we let live streaming increase the flow of people. And the following actions of Mrs. Sue have given everyone a new understanding of grass, wood, and ash. She finally stopped looking up at her granddaughter and focused on the camera. The old lady slipped away with her long, loose hair that reached her thighs, and in no time, a pot of ugly and small autumn cucumbers poured out from somewhere. She sat on a small stool, first cutting a cucumber into slices, then taking out a handful of ash from the stove and wiping it up. Live room audience. Do you want to perform eating dirt? As the sun sets in the west, in the courtyard surrounded by the side rooms and two main rooms of the Sue family, Mrs. Sue smiles in front of the camera with wrinkles on her face. She thinks this picture should be a peaceful scene of time. My family, I will teach you a dish. Use cucumber slices mixed with ash. The ash of plants will suck out the moisture in the cucumber. When it is dried, it can be pressed with large stones. It can be stored for several months. When you want to eat, wash it with water. After washing the cucumber in winter, it will still be burnt green and burnt green. Then you put some pepper oil, put some onion, flour and fragrant vegetables, and bubble them with soy sauce. Anyway, you can mix whatever you want to eat. This is small salted vegetables. It's delicious to eat, with some corn cakes and congee. If you use it to stir-fry meat slices, it would be even better. Fresh cucumber stir-fry meat doesn't have that taste, and it's especially crispy when stir-fried. When making dumplings, it's also a rare green dish in winter here, and it will also be the exclusive dish of the old Sue family. Because in my memory, the ancients here did not store cucumbers like this. Mrs. Sue remembers when she was young, she heard her grandmother say it was on the border of Yulin that she started eating like this, where there were Korean people. In the past, the Xianzhou people didn't have much to eat all year round and loved to study pickled vegetables. Gradually, this local dish emerged in the northeast region. So I am very skeptical that it was originally transmitted from that side, rather than the practices of our ancestors and ancient people. Don't look like it's buried in mud and dust right now, wash it clean. It has a nice name, called Huangguaqian. After Sue finished speaking, she also dusted most of the cucumbers and hung them in the sun. She reminded her granddaughter, please guide me over to wash your clothes. She needs to go to the backyard to pee and can't hold it anymore. These past few days, even an old lady can hold it for a while longer, let alone her granddaughter. She can't help but go to the bathroom. After the rain soaked the maggot. I can't think too much, it's too disgusting. When her sons come back, we must tidy up the thatched cottage well. But the old lady didn't come back for a while. Just looking at her, tying her pants and pulling a cane to observe the neighbor's collection of autumn cucumbers, she wondered if she wanted to buy all the cucumbers in the village. Thank you to the beautiful girls for voting. Thank you to A4318 and Xian for each giving a reward of 1,500 starting coins. Thank you to Wu Xianen and the Book Friend for giving a reward of 100 starting coins each on 20210330213231940. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Old and Unscrupulous Things. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Old and Unscrupulous Things. In the front yard, Su Tianxin was pounding several uncles' covers with a hammer. This makes her tired. I finally understand why my grandmother always says she can't do it when she hears her say she wants to wash the covers for the whole family. If she really wants to do it, wash her own clothes. Why do women in costume dramas use a hammer when washing clothes, and they can't even rub them with their hands? It was not until he visited his uncle's houses that Su Tianxin deeply realized that the old Su family had a food chain level. Like her and her milk, although she was also placed on a straw mat with a Kang mat on top, the quilt cover was at least gray coarse cotton cloth, with only a few patches on the entire piece, which is called the top of the food chain. Next, uncle and aunt's duvet covers are made of patchy coarse cotton fabric. Having a daughter-in-law in the house is different. Auntie would sew various colored cloth heads into diamond-shaped pieces, like a quilt patched together by various puzzles. Even the colorful ones can be seen, which is the second tier. But Uncle San and Uncle Shao are like a joke in this family. Eating the worst and using the worst, I believe raising some chickens and ducks at home will prevent me from ranking last. Su Tianxin picked up the already stiff duvet cover, and the fabric was not an exaggeration to say, this is the modern burlap bag piece. Just slightly thinner than modern burlap bags, the color is not yellow but light green. In her eyes, there was really no difference left, just a burlap bag filled with soybeans. As soon as the blankets of Uncle San and Uncle Shao were put into the water, they sucked away half of the basin of water and lightly pounded it twice, causing a layer of black ash to float on the surface of the water. Su Tianxin looked at the eye basin and felt deflated while washing her. She thought to herself, let's soak it for a while. She went to pat the pillow and put it in the yard to dry. While Su Tianxin was busy drying pillows and washing mats with loofah pulp, many people in the live broadcast room were scrolling through comments and asking, is this all about working from morning till night? Su Tianxin thought that everyone disliked her for being too boring without milk talk, so she used her hand to swipe the air and open the page to see if there was any background music to add. Yes, the system randomly assigns only one song. Do you want to play Shi Shua Shua? Forget it. But in fact, the people in the live broadcast room are not disgusted with boredom, but many women can't bear to watch it anymore, and they are scrolling through comments one after another, saying, this hired farmer is really serious. Look at the layer of skin on her hands that's cracked. Her breasts seem to say she's only 13 years old, not as good as my 60-year-old hands. I don't know why. Watching her work hard only makes me feel relieved. Memories and memories of my childhood are enough, but seeing her little hands stretched out makes me uncomfortable. I'm still living a miserable life, but unfortunately, I can't see the suffering in the world. Assistant, can you see us talking? You're the perfect age to change your skin, so you can't just make money for traffic without taking care of yourself. Listen to me, apply some hand cream, otherwise you'll suffer from frostbite in winter. If this continues for years, you won't be able to take care of your hands anymore. Is your grandmother biological? Yes. In fact, Su Tianxin applied some oil on her face. After taking a shower, she applied a little bit of white lard cooked in a farmhouse with her milk. The stir-fry is reluctant to add oil but smears it onto the face, leaving only the bottom of the lard at this time of travel. Su Tianxin believes that the current situation requires facing reality, and this behavior was unnecessary in ancient rural areas. Milk, however, said unhappily. The child's originally beautiful face was not bleached, and her mouth was not turning red. It was dry, and when she rubbed it, it would peel off dead skin. She didn't need any more oil to moisturize it, and as she spoke, she wiped her face. Su Tianxin was about to explain that she had wiped it. Unexpectedly, the ladies and sisters began to brush the screen and scroll in the comment area again. They made their own facial cleanser, face cream, facial mask, hand cream, and even toothpaste. They said enthusiastically, I understand. Aren't you just trying to create a more realistic effect? Why don't you learn from the ancients how to use these methods to maintain your skin and help us see if it works? One of the ladies posted it, peeling and slicing winter melon meat with a bamboo knife, boiling it with water, white honey, and good wine to make a paste, diluted and applied to the face every night. It is said that the face will be as white as fat within 2 years. Little sister, can you still make a question mark with the words, good wine, Mao Tai? Su Tianxin. Death. Pure grain and alcohol have not yet returned to Mao Tai, and currently, even a mouse wandering around her house has to shed tears. Besides, adding these things together, she might as well eat them in her stomach. However, Su Tianxin's heart was unusually warm. I was truly moved at this moment. Although my grandmother still talked to her last night, saying that the sound of family members was not a deception. From now on, in the live broadcast room, it is the local dialect and sentiment, which is equivalent to being the true family member. If you can't chat with the indigenous people here, you can chat in the live broadcast room. But I don't know if it's due to her slow temperament or just 2 live broadcasts, as she doesn't have the same deep feelings as her grandmother. Even though facing virtual screens, I still feel a bit awkward and reserved, and I have to ponder every word I say. But in this moment, Su Tianxin was truly moved by the enthusiastic hearts of all the big sisters and ladies. It seems that I was very concerned before, afraid that to be honest, I would be seen as intentionally selling to make money. The psychological pressure of making money has been relieved a lot. Another thing, she felt hot in her heart because she said, sisters, who would be able to help me check the miscellaneous information. When Hybrid Rice only uttered one miscellaneous word, Su Tianxin felt as if there was static electricity all over her body. The crackling sound of an ambulance outside was not enough, and her bangs even caught fire in half, creating a sticky smell on her face. The red alert indicates that nothing can change the world. Brackets are acceptable for personal use. But would you only feed yourself and not your family when grain is grown? Not going for takeout. Ensure that no seed is lost. Once these situations occur, you will turn all the food you grow into dogtail grass. Su Tianxin was extremely angry as she grabbed her curly bangs and said, "What's wrong with ironing her bangs into instant noodles? Milk, milk. Can you help me take a look at my forehead?" Su Tianxin ran to the backyard and stopped, only to find that she was pulling her face with a very serious expression. And on the other side of the wall, standing at the top of the wall, was an old man. In my memory, this is the old companion of my neighbor Grandpa and Grandma Hao. Grandma Hao's name is Hao Yinhua, and my grandmother's name is Hao Xianghua. It is known from the name that they belong to relatives, uncles and sisters from their parents' side. However, many things have happened in recent years, and the original family relationship has become very poor. Ku Tianxin remembers that she had just passed through that battle, and her next-door grandmother Hao was the one who treated her first. She didn't mind being dirty. Nai woke up without saying a word of thanks and turned around, as if afraid that Nai might know she had helped. "Sister, why are you in a hurry? I didn't say anything about it. What else do you want to say? My sister stinks so much that she doesn't look like me, not like me. What do you want to say? What's wrong with my silver flower sister? She didn't have to endure hardship with you. I see where you go and take a few sips of cat urine without talking to anyone. Have a nice weekend, beautiful girls. I hope everyone can vote more. Thank you for giving the blue happy cat a reward of 100 starting coins." End of this chapter.